Is it working? Is it working? Ought to be blimmin' working. Stupid computer. Anyway, there we go. Well, it is working. Excellent. I can see the thingamajig going up and down. Welcome, one and all. Welcome back to the writing stream. And apologies, I am no longer travelling through space because I've lost my green screen because of house moves and all sorts of other stuff, which is gathering pace as we speak. There's lots of boxes everywhere and things, and yeah, so things are proceeding apace. Things are proceeding apace. We are moving forward. So yes, I'm back without the green screen. So welcome to my spare room, which is very exciting, as you can see, in the midst of stuff. So I've got the computer set up in here, just in order to so I can continue streaming to the very end. The camera doesn't know where to focus. No, it's a funny sort of light. I suppose I could close the curtains, but I've got they've got nice green trees and things out there at the moment, so I kind of don't want to lose that. And it's a lovely clear evening, so I'm going to watch the sun go down. So the light illumination will slowly fade away as we go on through the evening. I recommend setting the focus manually and turning off the autofocus. Well, that's an excellent recommendation, Commander J, but I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to leave it alone. But never mind. Do I have a place to move to yet? It's called Scotland, Orkney Shore. Yeah, that's as close as I've got so far. No, we don't. So we will only start looking once we've kind of sold the house and done some of that sort of stuff. We know the sort of vague area. We've got budget and all that kind of stuff. But yes, but there we are. It's still a work in progress. We're evaluating and evolving and other words that begin with V. Still in space. I've got a holodeck background from a spare room. That's what it is, yes. Extremely convincing holodeck background. Right, let's do the thing, because the thing must be done before we go any further with this nonsense. Well, that's probably too late for that, but never mind. Here we go. Right, so who do we have in the chat? We have Wintermute GB. He's first in the chat. Of course he is. Always there with unfailing encouragement and ceaseless enthusiasm for all things Drew. It's Wintermute TV. Good to see you. Have a boo-boo with 4 thumbs up as usual. That's always good to see you. Thank you very much for having boo-boo. Orkney Sean is here as well. We all know that, but it's good to see you, Orkney Sean. Commander Sea Dweller is here with a Womble Ensemble, which I think is an excellent turn of phrase that I came up with just a moment ago. The Womble Ensemble. I think that's going to be Commander Sea Dweller's catchphrase from here on in. I'm in the chat for reasons that I don't really understand. Commander JR 1988 is here as well, and sorry I haven't been around for the last couple of weeks. That's okay, because neither have I. So there we are. Glenn is here. Glenn, Frank, good to see you, Glenn. Always nice to see you. Mad Monksoft is here, poised as ever on Wikipedia, just in case we need his expertise. Salty Sink going well is here as well. Hello, good to see you as well. Fabulous to see you. Frank Miner 2949 is here as well. Who do we have else in the chat that I haven't mentioned? I think I'm going to do it. I'm not having it. Says Commander Suitor. Well, you are. Hope you like it. Excellent. The Womble Ensemble. Ensemble is one of those words that sounds, when you spell it, it's not spelt how you say it. I mean, there are not a lot of words in that category, aren't they? But ensemble is like, it's not an ensemble, it's an ensemble. But yeah, hey, never mind. What can we do? Gentlemen, it is here. Excellent. Right, well, welcome back for a start, because I wasn't here last week. So you had 2 weeks to complete the homework, which I'm sure none of you have done. I have, because that's what I do. A Wemble Ensemble. No, Womble. You've got to spell it right. Ensemble Metapeia, something like that. Yeah, exactly. I must delve into the Wombles, actually. I don't know my Womble lore very well, if such a thing is actually a thing. But I'm sure it is. You know, there must be some background history to the Wombles and why they are on Wimbledon Common and why they see it as their raison d'etre to get around tidying everything up. Lucky Luigi's here as well. Cause ensemble is French. Ah, mais oui. Je parle français un petit peu, n'est-ce pas? Exactly. So there we are. Spelling it very unphonetically. But there we go. The Wombles Womble, but they don't know. Wombles. No, that's Weebles, I think you'll find. Glenarfray is a totally different kind of fictional creature. I think it's Is it Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down? I think that's... The Wombles are a peculiarly British thing, so I think it's a strange race of small furry. Well, they're kind of robots, aren't they? No, not robot. I mean, sort of rodenty type things. I'm not quite sure what a Womble is. It looks like a cross between a sort of badger and a ferret, really. I'm not quite sure what a Womble is actually supposed to be, or what size they're supposed to be. But they live on Wimbledon Common, which is presumably years ago was it still is. I mean, Wimbledon Common still exists, but it's entirely surrounded by built-up central London now. And they live there, and they basically tidy things up. Commander Sea Dweller has a whole history. They will have to write it one day. They're not who they think they are. The animation was just a clever cover story for the real Wombles. Is that true? Right? It's a whole backstory of strange Wombleness. They did have a series of pop songs written by Mike Batt. Is it Mike Batt? My wife has actually got the album. She threatens to play it at me occasionally. But I've done something pretty horrendous. Remember You're a Womble, Wombling Christmas. Things like that. And so the Wombles are a strange race of sort of odd rodents that dress in contemporary sort of, I don't know, 1950s British clothing, and some of them do actually. No, because there is a Scots Womble. There is Madame Chalet, who I presumably is a French Womble. So they seem to be internationally represented. I think there's an extra additional cast of Wombles that have come along in recent years to sort of, diversify them a little bit as well. But I'm not aware of Wombles, the next generation, very much. I only know Wombles, the original series. But they all sound like Bernard Cribbins. Yeah, I believe I'm writing saying that they're all named after rivers. Are they? So Orinoco, yes, okay. Tomsk, is that a river? Madame Chalet, is that a river? deep space Womble. Anyway, it's a peculiarly British thing, the Wombles, which probably doesn't translate very well outside of the UK. I wouldn't have thought. Uncle Bulgaria, yeah, Bulgaria's not a river, is it? I was going to say it's a country. And Tomsk Tomsk is an excellent word. So it's Tomsk, I think it's spelled. And it, the way it's spelled implies there's only one syllable, right? But when you say Tomsk, it's like it's got stealth syllables. There's at least 4 syllables in there. Tomsk. It's an excellent word. So I would never know of the Wombles except from Drew. My life is now complete. Well, there you go. That's why you come to this stream, you see, for waffles and education. So so I mean, there must be some interesting history behind the Womble. Why are they together? I mean, is it some sort of it's a bit like what was that? International Rescue, isn't it? With Thunderbirds, except at a lower level. So whilst the Thunderbirds, International Rescue, are going along saving people from, obliteration because of natural disasters and strange alien invasions and stuff. The Wombles are a sort of international tidying up force. Go around the world, just picking up litter and making things tidy. British ambitions are perhaps a little bit lower than some of the others, but we're still there with our international tidying force. And Wimbledon Common is where they live, apparently. I've been to Wimbledon Common. I've never seen a Womble, but I mean, maybe they're probably got stealth Wombles by now. They've been hunted to near extinction, have they? They all get their names when they come of age by choosing a name from Uncle Bulgaria's atlas. Is that right? I'd rather have the clangers. The clangers are pretty good. Is Wimbledon Common international? I don't know. I mean, it's technically in London, so London is a fairly international sort of a place. But Wimbledon Common itself, maybe it's got some sort of strange international recognition. Because why isn't it called Wimbledon Common? Now that is a very, very, very good question, Frank. I'm going to pass that one over to Commander Sea Dweller to explain, because I don't know what the answer is. And next week, the history and lore of the clangers. Wimbledon Common is a fleet carrier. It is in Elite Dangerous. It has to be said. Yes, the Wimbledon Common does actually exist in Elite Dangerous lore, rather ironically. Ah dear. Perhaps the Wobbles crash landed in Woking with the Martians from all the worlds and then migrated to Wimbledon. Maybe, yes, so they're the only survivors of the Red Weed invasion. We need at least to spend a couple of weeks on the soup. Now, yes, so the soup dragon. So for those of you, again, outside of the UK, probably don't know what we're talking about in terms of the clangers. The clangers are a sort of pink mouse-like creature that lives on the moon, or at least a moon. I'm not sure if it's our moon. I'm not quite sure whether the clangers' moon is. I haven't actually gone through the clangers to look for a sort of astronomical accuracy in the way that's presented, but I'm sure somebody has. So the clangers are a race of sort of pink mouse-like creatures that live on a moon, and they live in craters on the moon, and the craters are covered with metal, what we would call rubbish bin covers from the 1970s, because we don't have those kind of waste bins anymore. So there's an entire generation that wouldn't recognise the covers that the clangers have over their craters where they live, and their moon is sort of hollowed out on the inside. Now the clangers communicate with each other using this sort of pop whistle, sliding whistle thing. They go woo, 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 like that, and the Swanee whistle, that's what it's called. Now whether or not when they were making these things, they actually had a script, because there was a sort of narrator voice, a very, very, very nice narrator voice. I don't know what the guy's name, but if you watch an episode of the Clangers, the guy's voice, whoever that was, is a really, really, really nice narrator's voice. It's very, very British and relaxing in a sort of 1960s, 1970s sort of way, and that's all there is a sort of narration basically saying roughly what's going on. And then the clangers communicate each other basically using a Swanee whistle, which literally just goes like that. Whether there was a script, because I'm sure most kids most people my age will resonate with this, is that when we were young, we were convinced we could understand what the clangers were saying. But when you become an adult, you lose this magical ability to understand the clangers, and it's just noise. But deep inside the clangers' sort of interior, their moon was a soup dragon, and the soup dragon would eventually pop out of his soup. Why there was soup in the middle of the clangers' moon is unclear. But maybe presumably some sort of thermal core was keeping the soup warm, this dragon would live in the soup, and it would come up and dispense wisdom every so often to the clangers. The clangers seemed to have almost a sort of reverent attitude to this soup dragon that lived in the core of their moon, and thus was a British television legend born. Quite what these people were on, I have no idea, and quite what we thought we were absorbing, or what we did absorb as youngsters watching this stuff, is unclear. But there we go. I have no idea what the purpose. I mean, I can't imagine anything like it being made today. You can't understand them, so see, it's plain as day to me. What about Pew Pew, Barley McGrew, Cuthbert Dibble and Grub? Yes, we should get on with those. Sort of like the adults talking Peanuts Charlie, but yes, it's got that sort of vibe to it. That's right. Yeah, you know that's right, with the Charlie Brown thing, where the adults are speaking in the classroom usually, isn't it, in Charlie Brown, and there's this sort of muffled noise. You can't understand them. Bill and Ben the Flower Pot Men. So yeah, we are going back in time here. There was Mary Mungo and Midge. What else was there? Ivor the Engine, Magic Roundabout, Piggy and Perky. Maybe Mungo and Midge. Dear. We all ended up here watching you, Drew, I suppose. I suppose we did. The Clangers was made by Oliver Postgate, who also made Ivor the Engine. Oh, Ivor the Engine. That was good. In one episode, the Clangers, one of them swore. This is a persistent rumor, isn't it, Wintermute GB? I've not seen that episode, or whether it actually exists or not. So It was Oliver Postgate also narrated again. So anyway, Oliver Postgate's narration voice is very nice indeed. I could listen to that all day. It's just William, William Shatner narrated the American version of what? This is procrastination. We don't want to speak about Anne. Well, it wasn't. Who recommended this story, by the way? Whose fault was it? Who do we get to blame for the Ayn Rand story? Bagpuss. Okay, once upon a time. Yeah. So it was. So those sort of 70s kids shows were very odd, actually. You go back and watch them now. Now, the mouse organ. What was the name of the owl in Bagpuss? Professor something. Sorry for the international audiences. We've just gone into 1970s. Professor, was it Yattle or Yaffle? I think it was Yaffle actually. Was he a woodpecker? Sorry. I haven't seen Teletubbies has fortunately passed me by. Some weird kind of slightly surreal stuff is kid stuff. Anyway, let's tackle the subject du jour, shall we? Ayn Rand's story. Now, I didn't know anything about this story before it was recommended. Where's the button? There we go. Yaffle still moderates the Frontier Forum. Does he? Professor Yaffle. He's probably quite a good moderator, actually. So I didn't know anything about Ayn Rand. So she's a bit. Well, she was. She's obviously dead. Another person who's died. In fact, I think everybody we've read so far has actually kicked the bucket. She was a bit weird. I think that would be my summary of her, Frank, as well. It was, but I thought it was an interesting story. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it's quite hard going in the sense that it uses, and I thought that what also was interesting here is that she was writing in 1938 here. I think I'm right in saying, she's mucking about with pronouns. Which has slightly odd repercussions. A bit weird she would fit in here. I mean, yeah, it's a sort of it's a very dystopian story, which has a lot of quite good sci-fi touches in it. But she was a bit of a I mean, it's fair to say she was, let's just say, a little bit right wing. It's probably not the sort of person that most of us would get along with in a pub, to be honest. The characters here aren't very believable. I didn't think the characters were at all believable. I thought the story was quite clever, and they say that writing a book reveals an awful lot about you, the author, which I suppose is inevitable, right? So and it depends on why. Also, it depends a little bit on why you're writing the book. This one seems to be kind of like bad things will happen if you don't allow individuality. Is basically the message of this story. So slight spoilers there. It is basically a right wing. It's like, don't let the state control you. Yes, a little bit. Yes, it's a British little bit, which means actually a heck of a lot. So it's quite interesting, particularly today when we're mucking about with pronouns quite a lot in sort of general conversation, across the world nowadays. Whereas pronouns would be mucked about here in a science fiction context or a fictional context down there. So this was quite good. So let's dive into it now. There's an interesting side point here. So going off on a tangent already before we even start. She was. I think it's fair to say, not a particularly nice person. Now, does that colour how we should review a piece of work? I find this an interesting one because some people would advocate that you shouldn't. If an author has been found out to, by the standards of the day or by any reasonable standards, let's say, to be a bit dodge, as as we would say in the UK. And I can think of quite a few authors who, as individuals, were deeply flawed, right? So you don't need to go very far down that list before you find out that. Now, does that invalidate their work as a writer stroke author? Does it mean you have to put kind of some parameters around that piece of work? Does that mean that work should be edited for a modern audience? All those kind of questions start flowing out of these things, don't they? I don't know what the answers to those things is. I'm hopefully wise enough not to basically try and make some proclamations. I'm up for a debate on them, but it's an interesting one, is whether or not these books should be encouraged to be read for people to analyse. For their on their merit, and I don't mean merit in the sense of it's a good idea. I mean merit as in is it a stance that should be kind of evaluated, for its historical context or whatever else it happened to be that. But by the standards of today, this is a curiously timeless and almost oddly relevant sort of a story, because we're struggling today. I mean, interesting enough. The UK social media feeds are alive today with this announcement that we're trialling universal basic income. And you've already seen the arguments on Twitter, in one direction or another, in terms of whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. And it's ranging on one side to kind of extremes. This is a panacea that will solve all problems in the society, right? To the other side, which is basically, this is yet another slice of the World Economic Forum, basically taking over the world and making everybody dependent on a socialist state, and then kind of everything in between. And it's as the usual as it is in Twitter, it's a totally polarized thing. And this sort of story fits into this sort of debate rather well, actually. So there we go. So nothing should be edited just to allow it to die out naturally as people learn what's right and what's wrong. I tend to agree with you, Sean. I would always encourage people to write a news story, not edit somebody else's stuff, because it was written in its time and it was supposed to make a statement back then. And if it's deemed now to be old hat, then leave it to go, right? Don't try and recreate it. But the problem is you have money involved, don't you? And these people, some of these authors have legacies and estates that are owned by people today, and they want to make as much coin out of it as possible. So it's in their interest to keep things alive, isn't it? We've seen that with Roald Dahl recently, obviously, with his stuff being edited and getting in lots and lots of notoriety, and then being unedited back to its originality. And you think, well, that's good, but actually, was that just a publicity stunt? Etc., etc., etc. All that kind of good stuff. So it's very hard to disentangle all this sort of stuff. Some authors are very good at writing outside their own political views and writing well-rounded characters that they personally would disagree with in real life. Ayn Rand is not one of them. I've tried this. Now I am, I've written a lot of characters myself who I probably wouldn't get on with very well as people, mostly because they'd probably try and decapitate me or kill me or something like that. I'm not a particular. Well, I don't think I am anyway. I mean, it's difficult to be objective about yourself, isn't it? I don't think I'm a very political animal in of myself, right? So sometimes I agree with right-wing people, and sometimes I agree with left-wing people, and sometimes I wish there were just more people who would accept the science and actually do the science properly. I'm very middle of the road. You can probably sway me either way quite easily. So and I can subscribe to quite a lot of different things. I'm not a die-in-the-hard on one side of things, or on the other side. I'm used because I'm a natural diplomat. I suppose my tendency is to kind of see the positives from as many angles as possible. I don't always try and seek a compromise. That's my sort of natural sense of myself. But I don't write characters like that very often because that's relatively boring. If everything's diplomatic, that's not what you want. Middle of the road, easier to run over, says Wintermute GB. Wait till you get up here and ask which TVs are what. By the way, it's not a tangent because you can't truly evaluate a book without saying a bit about it. No, I think that's fair actually. So I mean, if somebody was, I try and turn this back on myself. If somebody was evaluating my characters from Shadewood, let's say, for example, to choose the biggest bit I've done, what would they infer about me from the characters that are in there? I'm not sure. I mean, I can't really answer that question. That's for somebody else. Would they say, "Oh, Drew's got a so and so slant," or he's obviously clearly subscribes to the XYZ interpretation of things? I don't know. That's for somebody else to say. Drew Wager, first on the fence where the revolution comes. Man who sits on the fence gets the trodden on. I will make a choice. I'm not a fence sitter, I suppose. I know that was in a jest, but no, I will come down on the side eventually. But I reserve the right to take my time to come to a reasoned decision. Is that fair? I have had, Glenn, you're quite right. I have had people infer my politics from my books, but as far as I can tell, utterly incorrectly, because they've basically inferred something that I had no idea what it was, and I had to go look it up to find out what they were talking about. So I don't know. Apparently, I can't stand football. It pisses off both sides. Okay, so that's good. That's good advice, actually, Orkney Sean. So I must admit, I'm not a football fan at all, or rugby, or any of those kind of charging about pointlessly kind of games. But that's probably not going to go down well either, is it? So I'm going to have to bear that one in mind. Maybe I'll just go and choose a team at random and go with that. I did, again, as a total aside here, I did once, and apologies to anybody watching the stream thinking, when's he going to get all about talk about the book? We will get there, it'll happen. I did once study a guide to how to survive football-obsessed people at work, because quite often that's a kind of culture that goes on in the office, isn't it? Did you see yesterday's game? And basically I armed myself with 10 questions / statements which you can use in conversation regardless of what's happening in whatever sphere it is, let's say the world of football, at any time, and they're still valid and still make you look like you're taking part in the conversation, but have absolutely no relevance to the game whatsoever. I have employed those with great success. So it's usually something along the line. Did you see the game last night? Oh yeah. What about that ref's decision? That was interesting, wasn't it? Oh yeah, the ref's decision. Blah blah blah. Yeah. You've got no idea what you're talking about, but the questions always work. So that's a slightly disingenuous tactic, but I may employ something along those lines. There we go. Right. So an interesting book. Quite an interesting read. At last, at least here's a positive thing for Ayn Rand. She hasn't given away the plot in the chapter heading, so there's a positive mark. And it's divided into 12 parts, or so for some strange reason she's decided not to use chapters. The ref's always wrong and the other side always cheats. It's a fairly dull table of content, isn't it? but it's no different from my chapter heading, so I can't really complain here. I don't put any. I use the word chapter, but I don't put anything in the chapter. This chapter is just a break point between scenes, as far as major break point between scenes. So that's kind of what she's done. So anyway, so off we go. So the first thing you get here, it's a sin to write this. It's a sin to think words no other thing can put them down on the paper, so no others to see. So she sort of sets up this environment where writing things down is dangerous. It's just evil. She doesn't explain why it's evil. It just is. Okay, and basically whatever environment this person is in, don't think. Okay, so it's highly oppressive, this environment. The laws say that men may not write unless the Council of Vocation. So that I don't know. So the Council of Vocation. Now, vocation is a sort of. It's not quite a job. A vocation is a bit more than a job, but it's kind of the Council of Jobs, kind of. So basically, unless you're told what you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do it. That's the environment here. And then whoever this person is, and it took me a while. I assumed the we here was a group of people, but it turns out it's not. Okay, so this person is referring to themselves by the pronoun we, which is a bit odd. Takes a while to, it makes the story quite hard to read, only because it's quite unusual. Apologies for the dog and these strange creatures that are lurking outside my front window. The laws say that none among men may be alone, ever and at any time, for this is the great transgression and the root of all evil. Now, I thought that was an interesting turn of phrase to grab, because the root of all evil, of course, is a biblical phrase. And it's usually and quite often misread from the Bible as money is the root of all evil. That's a very famous quote, but it's actually wrong. Okay, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible actually says money is the root of all kinds of evil, which is probably fair enough. But I wonder if that's been picked out of the Bible just to sort of add things in. The love of money, quite right, Glenn, exactly. Sorry, I got it wrong. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, is what the Bible actually says. So, not as it's quite often portrayed. So, is it a royal we? Well, I wondered that, but it's not, as it turns out. So anyway, so we get a little bit more here. So this person is in a dark place. All they've got is a candle. They're in a tunnel and they're writing in the dark. Okay, so it's clearly some sort of clandestine activity. So you go, okay, well, what's going on here? The walls are cracked, water run down them. So it's not a nice place. It's like a sort of dank place. The candle has been stolen from the larder of the home of the street sweepers. Okay, so and we shall be sentenced to 10 years in the palace of corrective detention if it's not discovered. So these are quite unimaginative names. Trugan, I apologise once more for the continued barking of the dog. Sorry about the dog. It's a space dog, okay, but it's at some distance. That's my Canadian side coming out. Okay, so it's sorry. Anyway, so these are not very imaginative names. So you can see that basically they've been left in as what they are, I think, to kind of emphasise what they do. So there's no point having a nice. I wish that dog would shut up now. What he's barking at. Shut up, stupid dog. I don't know. It implies to me that rather than having the palace of Ujimiflip or whatever it's going to be, right? It's written like that to give you no ambiguity about what this place is for. Okay, so the Palace of Corrective Detention is clearly, if you end up there, you know what's going to happen to you. The dog knows you're talking about Anne. Now that dog actually does bark quite a lot at this time of evening. It's because I'm on the other side of the house now. You're getting a whole new menagerie of space sounds. All right, I think I actually know that dog. It gets upset by very, very little things. There's a squirrel in a tree, or someone's walked past the house again. Dogs get very upset by things like that. So he's what he's doing. He's writing something down, and again he's referring to himself using this pronoun. This time it's our name is Equality 7-2521. So that's this person's name, and it's difficult to tell his or her gender at this point. Although it does say the law say that men may not write, so you're kind of guessing that the guy is a bloke. And it's written up on an iron bracelet which all men wear on the left wrist, so that kind of gives you a clue that he's actually a man. Squirrel in the tree, that wasn't me, that's an actual squirrel. We are 21 years old, we are 6 feet tall, and this is a burden, for there are not many men who are 6 feet tall. Okay, so it is a man. So now you've got a person. So it's basically a bloke called Equality 7-2521. So sort of giving you a sense that this is a sort of totalitarian regime going on. So men, a lot of the time mankind and men is sort of was very much more a universal kind of reference for humanity. Tend not to be used so much nowadays, but this is a story from the 1930s. He's 6 feet tall, and the teachers and the leaders pointed to us and frowned and said, so yeah, he's in trouble for being tall as well. There's evil in your bones, for your body has grown beyond the bodies of your brothers. So basically, non-conformity here is bad. Okay, so everyone's encouraged to be the same. Very much possible. So he's kind of accepted that being born tall or growing tall is a curse, and he has other things. We strive to all be like our brother men, for all men must be alike. Over the portals of the palace of the world, counsel are the words cut in marble, which repeat to ourselves whenever we are tempted. We are one in all, and all in one. There are no men, but only the great we, one indivisible and forever. So I was reading this in my head, and it's kind of like the Borg. You just like need multiple Druids saying this at this point. We are one in all, and all in one. There are no men, but only the great we, one indivisible and forever. Resistance is futile. You shall be assimilated. Which actually, if you think about it, the Borg are kind of the great levelers, aren't they? Because there is no individuality with the Borg. There is, your biological and technological distinctiveness will be adapted to service us, and there is just us. Okay, so from us, taking out the politics here, and yes, it is very, very right wing. There's no doubt about it. It's basically a rail. And they use rail in the old-fashioned sense there, against sort of socialism and libertarianism, I suppose. It's basically saying don't give the state power of any kind. Anyway, so there's this. So the world has fallen into some sort of dark age. Okay, you've got. We must never speak of the times before the Great Rebirth. Is basically the Great Rebirth is how this wonderful new environment has been branded. There's the Palace of Corrective Detention. Old ones. In the home of the useless. Prior times are called the unmentionable times, so all those sort of things there. So it's a bit of a strange sort of. Setup, but it's not for science fiction. It's not an unusual. It's not an unusual setup. Anyway, so it gives us a little bit of background. The home of the infants is where he kind of grew up. Then we learnt when we came, to the home of the students. Men must learn until they reach their 15th year. Then they go to work, and when you go to work, you are told. Where is it? You get an introduction to a few other characters here. Union 5-3992. So everybody's assigned a not really a name, more sort of not really a vocation there, more sort of statement. So you get equality and you get union and various other bits and pieces, and then just there's some sort of code number. So basically, and when they come of age, they basically are assigned a job. No problematical green screen. So it's a bit weird. So interesting enough here, and we learned much from our teacher. We learned that the Earth is flat and the sun revolves around it, which causes the day and the night. We learned the names of all the winds which blow over the seas and push the sails of our great ships. We learned how to bleed men to cure them of ailments. Okay, so we're basically setting the scene here that whatever they're being taught actually is a load of baloney. Disagree that in itself it's against the state. Okay, I've probably been drawing my own conclusions from this, which is I'm saying what I think, which is probably a bit unfair because I'm in a sort of position of total power here because you guys are just chatbots and I am the only corporal individual. But no, that's fair enough. Disagree that in itself this against the state. It is written as an anti-individualism. One could think of the danger of reading too much into anti. Yeah, so that's a good point. I mean, I took it as an anti-state kind of essay. I don't give the state too much power because if you do, they will abuse it. That's my sort of take on what the story is warning us about. But no, you're quite right, Commander Sea Dweller. I know that you're also, however, but you're supreme dictator of all Womblekind. So I mean, what can I say? Is it anti-individualism? So this environment that this person is in is basically has crushed individualism entirely. There isn't any. So there we go. But it's interesting that basically science has kind of been debunked as well. Science is wrong. Science is not is being taught incorrectly. They've found some innovations have been allowed, making candles, how to make glass. So it sounds like technology has regressed enormously as well. And it's a bit weird. Anyway, so eventually he is assigned to. So here's equality. He gets called up, and he is assigned to be and this is for life. This is your life mandate. You're told what your job is going to be for the rest of your life, and you have to go. He's basically told to become a street sweeper. Now he's got some sort of nascent ambitions in here. He's quite interested in the science. He quite understands that there's potentially stuff to find out and stuff. You can sort of sense his disappointment that he's sent to the house of the street sweepers. But that's basically what he said. And then thus we have lived all over the years, and all men must live until they're 40, and at 40 it's that's it, you're worn out. You're sent to the home of the useless. The old ones do not work, for the state takes care of them. This is where the state takes care of them is a frequent refrain, which is probably where I got the kind of anti-state kind of message from. Wombles do rule, and that's just how we want them. So it's quite interesting. Her real beliefs come obvious towards the end of the book. Yeah, so you do kind of get that. And the old ones know that they'll soon die, and when a miracle happens and some live to be 45, oh dear, they become the ancient one. welcome my friends to this Ancient Ones broadcast. And the children stare at them when passing the home of the useless, such as to be our life, all of our brothers and brothers. So it's that that's the life that awaits you in this environment. Not just anti-state, but kind of anti any form of welfare state. Yeah, so yeah, there's quite a message. Anyway, so this goes on for a while, sort of setting up the thing, and there's International 48818, and so on and so forth. You're not allowed to talk to other people. You're not allowed to interact with other people unless it's part of the vocation that you've been assigned. So it's all sorts of things. So it's there are everyone is controlled. It's a very it's not Orwellian. That's an easy phrase to throw around on these kind of things, but it's got feels of that sort of environment. But it's a kind of pre-technological kind of environment as well. Things have regressed, anyway, so he discovers this tunnel under the ground, which is a it's a tunnel that's been left from the unmentionable times, they think they should report it, but then they decide to keep it secret, and so on and so forth. So it's and they're kind of debating whether or not they will get into trouble for these kind of things. It's the statement, "Have a nice day," is more acceptable than "enjoy the next 24 hours." Anyway, so he's stolen these base, and we've stolen manuscripts, and so he's learnt things. But this first section is basically setting up that he's now sort of writing about what has happened to him in his life and how he's got to the sort of stage that he's got to. Anyway, so then he encounters another person, right? Another person. Liberty 5-3000. This is a woman. Okay, now this particular woman is assigned to work the soil, and they live in the homes of the peasants beyond the city. So there's a point at which the city sweepers stop their work, and that's sort of around about where these homes of the peasants are, where these ladies are working in a field. And she's she's described in a kind of really weird kind of a way. Their body was straight and thin as a blade of iron. Their eyes were dark and hard and glowing, with no fear and no kindness and no guilt. Their hair was golden as the sun. Their hair flew in the wind, shining wild. So there's a bit of kind of like, she's a nice person. Kind of I'm infatuated by her, because I'm not sure this character doesn't know what to do with that emotion because he's not prepared for it. Anyway, so they sort of notice each other, and this goes on for a while. The following day when we came to the road, they smiled, just for us, they greet each other with their eyes on the following mornings. They don't speak because it's a transgression to speak to men of other trades, save in groups at social meetings, and let alone speaking to a woman. I mean, that must be clearly a really, really, really bad thing. So everything that's going through the mind of this person is sort of constricted by the sort of social environment that they're in. They're not allowed to do this, they're not allowed to do that. There are so many laws, it's kind of like overwhelming. And he nicknames her the Golden One, because she's got nice hair, I guess. So eventually he sums up the courage to say, "You are beautiful." They have this rather strange conversation because they're sort of feeling around the edges of their presumably mutual attraction, but they don't know how to interpret it with each other because they don't know their social boundaries are enforced around them, and crossing those social boundaries is something they've been conditioned basically from birth not to do. But they recognise something in each other that is a little bit beyond it. And how old are you? So 17. Now, apparently the women at the age of 18 basically get assigned, I think I've skipped part of it. Yeah, they have to go to the Palace of Mating. Now, it's fairly obvious what that's for. Commander Ho Hubris says, literal laugh for you. If a character is described as rolling their eyes, always imagine them removing their said organs and rolling them like marbles. It's so they have to go to the Palace of the Mating, and the Palace of Mating isn't a nice place. It's only basically for procreation. The women go there to be effectively impregnated by certain males, and it's all chosen for them. Okay, there's no individual selection, so you're basically assigned a person and told right, that's it, go impregnate, and it just reminds me of that Red Dwarf sketch with the sirens and the barely 3,000 of us. So she's basically dreading this. She will be assigned to the Palace of Mating within the next year, and she's obviously dreading it. This goes on for a while he considers all this sort of stuff. And basically he then wonders, so quality looks through the window upon the sky, and there is peace in the sky and cleanliness and dignity. Beyond the city there lies the plain, and beyond the plain, black upon the black sky, lies the uncharted forest. So everything beyond the city is effectively uncharted. We don't wish to look upon the uncharted forest. We do not wish to think of it because men never enter that uncharted forest. So surrounding the city is the uncharted forest, which you're not allowed to go to because it's fearful and dangerous and it's unexplored, and there are wild beasts and bad stuff in the in the uncharted forest. So whatever you do, don't go to the uncharted forest. And there's lots of rumours about it, and the evil ones live there and stuff. Okay, evil ones are mentioned more times. Blah 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 blah. And he's fearful of even asking the question. Okay, that's something that's going on there. Now, if you do, and there's also the introduction here of an unspeakable word, right? There is some word, okay, the single word which is not in the language of men, which had been. So there's been a word that's been banned, And it's the unspeakable word which no man may speak or hear, but sometimes, and it's rare, sometimes somewhere, one among men find that word. So whatever this word is, people occasionally stumble upon it. When they speak it, they are put to death. Okay, so this is the worst possible crime in this society. Is you discover a word, you say it, and that's instant death. And they don't mess about here. Okay, it's not Womble, fortunately, no. We have seen one of such men burned alive in the square of the city, so that's nice. Yeah. And it was a sight which has stayed with us through the years, and it haunts us and follows us and gives us no rest. We were a child then, only 10 years old, and we stood in the great square of all the children, all the men of the city, and sent to behold the burning. So that this is a society which basically deems it okay to put 10-year-olds in the square and watch them see somebody burned to death. And that's after they've torn the tongue out of him. So it's pretty kind of like, ugh. So it's not very nice. Let's be say. Now, Equality discovers something. Now he's obviously got some sort of latent scientific ability. Now what he discovers isn't entirely clear, but it seems to be some sort of electricity from the description. So we were cutting open the dead body of a frog, and we saw its leg jerking. It was dead, yet it moved. Some power unknown to men was making it move. I couldn't understand. And after many tests, we found the answer. The frog had been hanging on a wire of copper, and it had been the metal of our knife, which had sent the strange power to the copper through the brine of the frog's body. We put a piece of copper and zinc into a jar of brine, and we touched a wire to them, and there under our fingers was a miracle which had never occurred before. So he sort of somehow, in the midst of his street sweeping, has discovered electricity. And he gets on quite a long way. Very shocking it is. Apparently it defies all the laws he's been taught, so it makes the needle move on the compass. But we'd been taught when still a child that the lodestone points to the north. The lodestone is a naturally occurring magnetic rock. And this is a law which nothing can change, whereas obviously electromagnetism can change things. So it's a bit contrived that this individual would be able to kind of deduce the nature of electricity so quickly and then do a whole bunch of jolly handily useful experiments which shows everything he's been taught is wrong. But that's basically the setup. And he jumps from seeing a frog's leg to understanding how a compass works. And figuring out that lightning is electricity as well in 2 paragraphs, which is pretty damned impressive stuff. And then he goes on to build things with his electricity. But he's worked out that other people in the past, i.e. the unmentionable, the civilization of the unmentionable time, had worked electricity things as well. So electricity going on. So I quite like this because I've done something similar to this sort of stuff in Shadewood, i.e. that the inhabitants knew there was some sort of power, the electricity that I put into my Shadewood books that they sort of stumble across and then learn to manipulate. But it takes them a few books to get that far rather than just a couple of paragraphs. So there we go. Could be an ignorant genius. I don't expect it on street sweeping, but I doubt cutting up frogs is part of the job. Well, it's a good point, Haunted Loaf. It's at this point I would have put the book away as being total trash. Well, yeah, I know what you mean, but I was intrigued by where it was going. So he's discovered electricity. Anyway, then he goes back to his the girlfriend, basically tells her, I've got a special name for you. And then she's got a Dave thing, and they clearly kind of they start being nice to each other. They bring each other water and things like that. And so this is unheard of. What are they doing? He then builds some sort of device out of electricity, and it's a box. Yeah, out of the remains of the unmentionable times, a box of glass devised to give forth the power of the sky of greater strength than we had ever achieved before. And when we put wires into this box, we closed the current and the wire glowed and it came to life. So he's basically invented a light. um, it's he's basically invented an electric light, which is pretty impressive, really. And then he basically sort of decides, what am I going to do with this box of light that I've invented? First time chat keeps on. Are we doing a story review? Yes, we are. This is Anthem by Ayn Rand. So, which book should we burn first? I don't think I sanctioned the burning of any books, really. But there we go. So is it? I mean, here's a good question. Okay, is it well written? Well, the situation is highly contrived and unrealistic, I think. Is it, in terms of its writing, is it well written? I think I'd have to say yes, it is. Unlike our man, the Tales of Guire here with his disjointed sentences and plot, and inconsistencies. This is a lot more seriously written. So I think in terms of kind of its grammar and its structure, it's superior. But it's a highly contrived situation here to make a particular point. So this is not a story that's about entertainment, really. This is trying to make a statement. So is it well written? It's well written structurally. But yeah, I don't know. Side note. Ayn Rand, is that how you pronounce it? Ayn? Okay, interesting. I had to call it Anne. All right, interesting. Ayn Rand. So more for a vehicle for her promotion of her views. I would agree with you there, Commander. This is a statement piece. This is a statement essay. Ayn. Okay, Ayn. Interesting. This is a statement piece. This is there's a very strong. This is a lecture coming out of this story. Anyway, so he's made this box, an electric light, and he's basically trying to decide what to do with it. And basically he decides to tell the council that he's invented this electric light. But he's caught before he goes to tell them because he hasn't been doing his street sweeping. So he gets punished for not doing his street sweeping, and they're basically saying, where have you been? What have you been doing? And eventually, the torture effectively. He's kind of abused by his torturers. Now it's interesting here. It says it was easy to escape from the Palace of Corrective Detention. The locks are old on the doors, and there are no guards about. There's no reason to have guards because nobody ever defies the rules. So nobody breaks away from the rules. So the security is lax because why do you need security when everyone obeys the rules? Oh, it's a good question. Not a very realistic scenario, but there we go. Anyway, so he decides that he's going to take his box to the scholars. And then he basically relates what happened when he gets to the scholars. So he greets them. Who are you? You do not look like a scholar. Well, no, I'm not a scholar, actually, as it turns out. I'm a street sweeper. A street sweeper? Why are you here? It's against all the rules and the laws. So he's off on a bad... he should have been able to predict this negative reaction, I would have thought. But anyway, he tries not. So he basically disclaim himself. It doesn't matter who I am, but I've got a gift. We hold the future of mankind in our hands. Anyway, he shows them the electric box. And basically they're a bit concerned by this light. He basically says... here it is. Don't be scared of it. This is yours. I don't want anything for it. Have you nothing to say? We have much to say to a wretch who's broken all the laws and boasted their infamy. How dare you think your mind held greater wisdom than the minds of your brothers? And if the councils decreed that you should be a street sweeper, how did you dare that you would be of greater use to men sweeping the streets? So basically, he said, you're a street sweeper. How dare you? How dare you consider to be anything more than that? So don't try and exceed the limits you've been set. You hold yourself alone as one alone with the thoughts of one and not of the many. Yeah, that comes straight from the Borg, doesn't it? You should be burned at the stake. No, lash them till there's nothing left under the lashes. So let's kill him, but let's kill him in a different way. Yeah, and eventually, basically, he comes down. I don't mind. Kill me if necessary. But what are you going to do with the light? The light. Keeps on. I don't have a good defining line on where the difference between essay and novel, but I believe it would have to lie somewhere near the presence of narrative or plot rather than whether or not a person's views are clear and the text promotes them. Yeah. So, and Orkney Sean, yes, know your place. So yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? JR98, to be fair, you're a street sweeper, what are you doing dissecting frogs? Yeah, that's a fair question. They didn't ask that question. You think you found a new power. Do all your brothers think that? And they don't. So clearly he's wrong because not everyone's in accord. Therefore the box is useless. And if it were to be used, it would bring great ruin to the this made me chuckle. The Department of Candles. I can't possibly have any competition with the Department of Candles. So there's a very strong worldview here, isn't it? Very strong world, and that would wreck the plans of the councils. And without the plans of the World Council, and this is really pushing it, isn't it? Without the plans of the World Council, the sun cannot rise. This is a diplomat. For anybody who's ever sat in some management meeting thinking, what the hell are we doing in this meeting? This really is this is it. This is my favourite paragraph of the entire book. It took 50 years to secure the approval of all the councils for the candle. 50 years. And decide upon the number needed and to refit the plan so as to make candles instead of torches. This touched upon thousands and thousands of men working in scores of states. I can't alter the plans again so soon. I've been in some meetings like that. And this one comes back to, this is a particularly prescient bit with, the rise of AI and the thing about universal basic income that's come through just in the last few days. And if this should lighten the toil of men, said Similarity, then it is a great evil. For men have no cause to exist save in toiling for other men. Now there's a worldview. So the box must be destroyed, they decree. But he basically won't accept this. He grabs the box, calls them fools, swings his fist through the window pane, finally some action, and leaps out in a ringing rain of glass. Good for him. Okay. And then he runs. Okay. He runs and 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 ends up, surprisingly, in the uncharted forest. And because he knows he's safe now, because nobody will go into the uncharted forest because it's the uncharted forest. Therefore, you don't go into it. And he thinks he's doomed. The only thing he misses, of course, is his girlfriend, the golden one. Anyway, so he spends a day in the forest and finds out that actually the uncharted forest isn't as bad as everyone's being made it out to be. He finds trees and he finds rivers and no sunlight falls in his face, and there isn't a bell ringing everyone to tell him what to do. He's just there in the forest. We didn't wish to move. We suddenly thought we could lie as long as we wished. I don't have to do anything. We could rise, run, leap, fall down again. I could do anything. And he starts rolling around in the moss, and we laughed, and nobody told us not to. Okay, so and he just keeps going. He gets hungry, sees a bird, chucks a stone at it, kills the bird, eats the bird over a nice fire, and he's enjoying himself. And then watches the sun go down, and so on and so forth. On the second day in the forest, somehow his girlfriend turns up. She's left as well, because she followed him somehow. I'm not quite sure how she knew where he'd gone, or how that she knew that the meeting with the scholars and the elders hadn't gone well. But anyway, so they sort of followed on. And apparently, when she finally turns out, explains it, basically she says, well, the whole city's talking about it. I figured out where you've gone. Or we referred to ourselves as we had figured out. So anyway, so it suddenly, so they basically talk about what they're doing, they find out about giving each other a cuddle and a kiss is all jolly nice, 21 years we have no idea what joy was. Now we've suddenly discovered it. Don't fear the forest. Let us forget their rules, etc., etc., etc. So, so then they sort of make love in the woods, which is jolly nice as well. And they make a bow and arrow, and they've got many arrows, and they basically set themselves up as a jolly nice life. Someday we'll stop and build a house. The days before us are end. Have no end, just like the forest itself. So, so we go, and then it sort of starts to come to a conclusion. Then we go on and bless the earth under our feet. The questions come to us again as we walk in silence. If what we have found is the corruption of solitude, then what can men wish for save corruption? If this is the great evil of being alone, then what is good and what is evil? So that's quite. I thought that was quite a deep sentence. Who has defined what good and evil is? Is that society? Is that individuals? Is that an overpowering state? Who has decided what good or evil is? And if evil is so jolly nice, is it evil? Anyway, so then they declare that they love each other, wondering kind of what to do about it. And then eventually they find a house, a sort of broken down house, which is left from the unmentionable times, and it's amazing. This house has somehow, it's got sleeping halls, and it's got garments, and it's got rooms with shelves in, and one part of the house they find a whole bunch of books. It's got a library, yay! So they start reading the books, and this last part starts with I am, I think, I will. So suddenly the pronoun has changed, which is good. Yeah. So it's kind of a bit. They can read. That's a good question. Anyway, so he basically redefines. I will take a road. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to go there myself. Okay. I won't surrender my treasures. I will choose whether or not to serve them with other people. I don't owe anything to my brothers. I don't ask anyone for anything, and I don't have to give them anything. I will choose my friends. The word "we" must never be spoken any longer. He's kind of rejected that whole thing. I am done with the monster of "we," the word of serfdom, of plunder and misery and falsehood and shame. And now I see the face of God, lowercase g, and I raise this God over the earth, this God whom men have sought since men came into being, this God who will grant them joy and peace and pride, this God, this one word is I, which of course you figure out at this point is the unforgivable word. So he's discovered individuality, right? And then he figures out how to read the books, and saw the word I used quite a lot. Okay, so they give each other new names, which they kind of take from the book. So Gaia, i.e. kind of the world, mother of earth. I don't know what he calls himself. Prometheus, there we go. He calls himself Prometheus. And he learns that electricity was discovered long ago. And so he's built new things with them. Yeah, he builds a electrical barrier around his house to kind of protect it. And one day he's planning to go back and kind of rescue all the people from the slavery. and so then he talks about it. At first, man was enslaved by the gods, but he broke their chains. Then he was enslaved by the kings, and he broke their chains. He was enslaved by his birth, by his kin, and by his race, but he broke their chains. He declared to all brothers that a man has rights, and then he gave up everything that he had won. So this is kind of a lecture on why the world fell apart prior to the story. They sort of somehow lost their spirit. They lost the steel towers, the flying ships, the power wires, all the things they had not created and could never keep. Quite how they lost it isn't entirely clear, but there were a few people maybe who didn't surrender, but eventually they lost the battle. And to them I send my salute across the centuries and my pity. So society fell apart and collapsed and became this weird structure. So there we go. So, and for the coming that I could continue to fight, and my sons and my children. So he's planning to basically repopulate the earth with people who can think for themselves. And here, over the portals of my fort, I shall cut into the stone the word which is to be my beacon and my banner. The word which will never die should all perish in battle. The word which can never die on this earth, which is the heart of it and the meaning and the glory. The sacred word is ego, as in, myself. And that's the end. It's a curious story. I thought quite a compelling read, but more a lecture than a story. It's it's a call to be selfish, isn't it? It is. It's kind of like individualization at the cost of absolutely everything. I will do what I want. I will break away from all strictures. I will break away from all society to form, because that's the greatest thing that can ever be achieved. So you can view it as a kind of escape. I mean, I suppose the sort of romantic sort of storyteller in me is basically kind of looking, oh, boy meets girl and escapes from horrendous, overpowering state. Isn't that nice? And it's kind of got that vibe to me on one hand, but this whole thing about I know better than other people is the kind of flip side of things. Haunted Life seems kind of anti-state to me, so that's the reading I took from it. It's basically, don't give the state too much power, because if you do, they will take away your freedom. It was that's how I was interpreting it. But it's certainly a story that makes you think. Which does that mean it's a good story? I think it made me think about it. It was on. I finished it. When did I finish it? I finished it last Wednesday, and it kept popping back into my mind actually for the next couple of days. So I think it's a good story in the sense that it's thought provoking. It's slightly disturbing story, and I'm not quite sure I've pinned down exactly why I found it disturbing, but it is disturbing. And like you say, Ayn Rand was a curious character. So I don't know. I feel like I've been slightly indoctrinated by reading this. I'm going to have to decontaminate myself a little bit. A more generous reading might be that there is a balance to be reached between the we and the I would tend to agree with that. That it's you've got to be part of society. You can't be apart from it. You've got to be a part of it. But there is a line between overzealous state interference, and there's also a line that you can't just go for total anarchy, because nothing works at all. So it's an odd one. It is an odd story. I would argue it's well written. There's nothing in the text that I'm tripping over going, oh, that's bad writing, other than probably the contrivances used to push the story on, like the electric box. It seemed a bit kind of far fetched. Because our main character also builds his fort for his chosen friends. He sort of said it's got that sort of. I will work with a trusted small group of people to kind of protect my ideals, which feels a little bit to me like let's just go find ourselves a defensible position, grab a bunch of guns, and anybody who comes close is in trouble. Real White Wyvern, a disturbing book. Yeah, I think it is a disturbing book. If a tale keeps popping up into your mind days after, it's because it's diametrically opposed to my views. Yeah, I mean, I am an individualist to a degree. I don't, but I appreciate the fact that society exists. Because I mean, you can't do everything yourself, right? So you can't operate in a world where you're just the only individual. Who's gonna do the electricity and the plumbing and everything else that I don't know how it works. Could have had the stream without cooperation to maintain it. Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, how would the internet work? We couldn't have the internet. It doesn't mean there's a conspiracy to control all communications. It just means we need lots of people around to make the internet work. Some trash you have no issues with seldom surfaces in your mind again, in my view. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a good story in the sense that it's thought provoking. I don't like it as a premise, but that's not necessarily the point of the story, isn't it? So maybe if the story had been developed more. Yeah, I mean, from a writing perspective, if you were talking about a proper science fiction story, you'd have to develop this a bit more. But that's not the point of the story, really, is it? I mean, there's a bit of romance at the end. But it's sort of quite perfunctory, and it's quite obvious, and it's quite methodical. It doesn't have any passion in it. It's it's just like, yes, they fall in love, and then isn't that nice? It's not very realistic. To clean the telephones, exactly. We need telephone sanitizers. Keeps on says, I appreciate others drinking coffee, so I don't have to. But Prometheus is very good at physics. So there is a point of view that individualism is actually the definition of evil. If a man shoots you for no reason because he doesn't like your hair colour and lives outside the... Well, yeah. I mean, I've, as I've mentioned before, when I was at school, I did get bullied at school for no other reason than I wasn't the same as everybody else. And I think that's a common scenario that people come across. That people take a dislike to you because you're just different. So individualism in those contexts is bad, right? It's just it's not helpful. It is a bit Deus Ex Machina at the end. It is, yeah. The Department for Dissecting Frogs. So it is a pretty deep. It does pull up a lot of issues. And what I thought was fascinating was for a book that was written in 1938. It seemed oddly modern. I.e., some of the issues it was kind of addressing haven't gone away, have they? In the intervening years, it still seems to be a relevant sort of take on things. Here in 2023. So, I suppose if you actually like the idea of running and living in the woods, the ending might be satisfying. Yeah. I wonder what Ayn Rand, we've got to say, would have made of Elon Musk. I don't know. Yeah. So does it mean that communism is the embodiment of good? Well, I mean, that's getting very, very deep. I don't think. I don't think we can go that far, do we? I mean, what is it they said about politics is that democracy is the least worst system that we've got for looking after things, which I think is probably about right. Democracy is deeply flawed as well, but I think I would take it. I think I'd take it over most of the other social constructs on offer. It's really interesting. I want to do a reading of the story in light of modern marketing, because all modern marketing is about you deserve this, very individually focused. That's a good point. Actually, keeps on. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're entitled to this. You deserve this. Yeah, individuals like you. I mean, I was watching. It's quite interesting in the car advertising at the moment. That I don't watch much terrestrial TV, but every so often I think we were watching the Grand Prix highlights on Channel 4 yesterday, and Channel 4 is in the UK is a channel that is privately owned, so it has adverts in it. Okay, so every 15 minutes you get some adverts, right? We're all quite used to that. But the adverts were oddly enough mostly for electric cars, so which I assume sort of maybe fits in with the whole Formula One thing. Basically, an electric car. If you haven't got an electric car, you're behind the times. You're yeah, the electric. Yeah, if you have an electric car, it marks you out as an individual. It marks you out as somebody special. It marks you out as somebody who's thought about things and is pushing, pushing the envelope and being innovative and being new and embracing change. That's the message that's coming through the advertising, which I thought was quite interesting. Has no there's no impact on me because I don't want an electric car. But it's interesting how the adverts are being pitched, and it's quite interesting. Channel 4 is public, so is it? I thought it was private. Why has it got adverts on it? Is that just who owns Channel 4? Pushing the car when it runs out of juice in the middle of the Highlands. Yeah, exactly. I thought Channel 4 was. Oh, so my apologies then. In that case, Channel 4 isn't private. It's public there, but it's still supported by adverts. So where do they get their money from if they're public? Because it's not part of the BBC fee, is it? So it's publicly owned but not publicly funded. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's got adverts. That's what I meant to be. But the adverts are interesting. And I think Anne doesn't enjoy. So I mean, I remember having these conversations with my dad when I was a young whippersnapper about democracy and things. And I do remember my dad saying something along the lines of, what we actually need is a benevolent dictatorship. And I remember thinking at the time, well, thereby lies the problem. So I don't know that. What's a good system? A tricky sort of thing. All advertising just manipulates the zeitgeist of the times. I think that's very true. Yeah. So the advertising very interesting to watch. C4 gets funding from the BBC, which is why they try so desperate to sell it. Okay. What are we ripping to apart next week? Well, I thought we'd have a break from ripping books apart next week. What I wanted to try. Is we've touched on this stream a few times. We've been talking about AI quite a lot. Now I wanted to have a poke at AI. So what I was thinking might be fun is I want to set AI a task. Okay, so I'm going to I've got a little bit of time when I'm traveling. I have to think of some ideas this week. I've got quite a busy week actually, but I'm going to go and see whether or not I can set a task, to write a short story. Now, and I want to have a go at it, and I want AI to have a go at it as well. And so a thousand words seems to me to be enough. So what I want to do is maybe next week define the parameters of what we want to ask an AI to actually try and achieve. So my idea is that sort of, I want to write a short story of 1,000 words, and I want, and maybe some of you want to have a go at this as well. And I want an AI. I'm going to have a look around and see what the best, because I've had a few looks around. I want to sort of see what the best AI that's kind of publicly available for us to actually submit the question to is also capable of doing. So what I'd like to spend next week trying to do is to figure out what the parameters of the competition should be, and see if we can come up with a premise that we'd like the AI to go. So it might be something like write a science fiction story set on another planet with with a protagonist and an antagonist with an unexpected twist ending, right? In less than 1,000 words, or something like that, and see if we can define a challenge which we will then, as human writers, we can take away as a premise, and then we'll also get the AI live on the stream. We're not going to give it any preamble because AI doesn't need to have any preamble, and see what it comes up with, and then critique it back. And I will offer whatever I come up with to be critiqued by you guys as well, and we'll see who comes out on top. This may be the end of my writing career, because you may decide actually that AI is much better than Drew. It's doing the stream from here on in. Do I have an exact theme title? No, I don't. So I thought next week's stream could actually be, let's see if we can work out the parameters of the test. Are we going to know who wrote what? I think it might be fun to do. Well, that's a good thing actually. We should make it. Yeah, I mean that's the sort of thing to chuck into the thing. Is how should we evaluate it? Maybe we should take all the names off. And yeah, and seeing. Well, that's even better. Particularly if we've got multiple people, seeing if people on the stream can figure out which is the AI story. It's almost a jury test. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Let's use next week's stream to work out the parameters of the test, and then see what happens. I think it would be great fun. I might publish it a little bit wider as well and see how many people can get to come in on this thing. Let's see what happens. Because I think it'd be fun to try out. Let's give it a whirl. So that's going to be next week's stream. I think because I've got a bit of a hard stop, as you know, coming up on my stream for the end of June because of house moves and stuff. But this would be a nice way to give us all something to think about. Where we go to finish logging in. Please write a 7,000 word story. That's right. So I want to keep it sensibly short. So 1,000 words isn't very much, right? So it's probably I don't know how 1,000 words is probably page and a half of A4 or something like that. So it's not a lot of text. So it should be within the bounds of something that we can do. Let's see what happens. Can I post the parameters on Twitter in case people miss the stream? Yes, I'll put it out on as many channels as I can. And we'll see what happens, shall we? Do you remember the end of story competition? 10 writers wrote the first half of a story, and the challenge was to write the second half. I wonder if that would work. It's a good task for us. Yes, that's possible. I'd like to. I want to give the AI as hard a time as possible because I don't want to give it something to work with. I just want to give it a premise and say, go on then, be creative, do your best. So it's basically you don't get much to start with. You've got to come up with something creative because my premise, if I'm honest, is that AI is not very good at being creative. So whereas I hopefully as a writer go, I'm going to come up with a really insane twist on this story. I'm hopeful that AI can't do that, but it depends on how it does it. Because of course, if it's got access to all the best twists that across bunches of literature, it might promise to use one of the things. And then AI will obviously evaluate my stream and learn from it, and next time it will write something even better. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. So let's spend next week having a good hard think about the actual parameters of the competition, and then we'll figure out how to do the actual competition. I'm going to cry if AI does better than all of us. So that there's no homework for this week other than thinking and ruminating on what the parameters of this test should be. I think would be quite good. It's going to be like The Incredibles, yeah. We make the machine better every single time, yeah. But yeah, we'll you asked for the AI to write in the style of Ayn Rand. It refuses the ultimate of individuality, yes. We shall see. So I shall endeavour to be serious, no promise. Well, we'll take all that as well because humour. Can AI do humour? So there we go. Anyway, right, my friends. With that, I shall leave you this evening to ruminate on the possibilities that will all be replaced by AI. Comedy, I don't know if I could write comedy though. So, but there we go. Anyway, it should be a fun idea. Let's work on exactly what the parameters of that should be and what AI we're going to use to try it. And we might all be out of a job by the end of the week. But there we go. Let's find out what happens. Anyway, thanks to Ayn Rand for what was actually quite an interesting story. Not really my cup of tea, but it was interesting. And thanks to the rest of you on the stream as well, obviously. Yes, so next week we will do battle with artificial intelligence and see what happens. Look after yourselves. Have a fantastic week ahead. I've got a busy one actually. I've got to go to Norwich tomorrow and Scotland on Friday. So it's going to be a lot of driving in the car, which will allow me to ruminate on many things. So we'll see how it goes. But look after yourselves. Be good. See you See you next week for yes. Let's find out what happens. Take it easy, my friends. Be good. See you soon.